Hi, my name is Paige Radiguero, and today I will be talking about our paper, Please Turn Your Cameras On, Remote Onboarding of Software Developers During a Pandemic. This work is in collaboration with Danae Ford, Tom Zimmerman, and Brian Hoke from Microsoft. The last year and a half has looked a little bit different for many programmers. In the last year and a half, many developers have switched from working in a physical office with their team to working remotely with their team via video calls and other ways of communication. And those who switched jobs or entered the workforce have now had to interview remotely and onboard remotely. In this paper, we asked the question, what was the remote onboarding experience of Microsoft software developers who onboarded during the COVID-19 pandemic? We asked 4 research questions in this paper. The first one, what are the challenges that developers encountered when onboarding during the pandemic? Second, what are teams doing to onboard new hires? Third, how do team members interact with new hires during the pandemic? And finally, the fourth, do new hires feel socially connected to their team? To answer the 4 questions, we sent out a survey to full-time employees that had recently onboarded during the pandemic. The survey had both open-ended and closed questions, and from the data collected, we then performed open coding between the authors, and we also did a quantitative analysis on the data. Finally, we conducted some interviews with new hires and early career employees. We sent out 1,000 emails to recently onboarded full-time developers from Microsoft. From that, we had 267 responses collected. These developers were not interns, they were full-time from North America. We limited it just to North America due to the lockdowns happening at different times across the world. And we required that they had started their job in 2020. Let's dive into our results from our survey. We're going to jump into the first research question, and that question looks at the new hires challenges that they faced while onboarding during the pandemic. For this research question, we primarily looked at one of the questions we asked the new hires that had onboarded in the survey. And so the question we asked in the survey was, what challenges have you faced while onboarding to your team and project? And so this question was an open-ended question, and participants could write as much as they wanted to answer the question here. And we collected quite a bit of data, and from that data, we decided to do a qualitative analysis using open coding to better understand this data. And from that, we saw that 6 different themes, challenge themes, emerged. And so these themes are just themes that we saw across the data from new hires and the challenges they're facing. So the 6 themes are communication and collaboration, asking for help, building team connections, finding documentation, technical issues, hardware, and permissions. On the right, you can see some of the quotes from this data that we collected, and you'll notice that they talk about collaboration difficulties, keeping the camera off makes it harder to collaborate, understanding the team and organization is difficult being remote, and it's harder to ask for questions and for help because you don't necessarily like walk in to the hallway and see someone, and so one of the participants mentioned that they actually asked for help less because they were not able to just randomly run into someone in the hallway. For the second research question, we look at the team and their onboarding efforts to help the new hire. We asked a couple questions to help us understand the team onboarding efforts, but for this talk, I'm going to focus on one. We asked participants what the team had done to make them feel connected, and the themes that came from this question included having frequent one-on-ones with their manager. Some of them mentioned having a first day meeting remotely where they were able to meet their entire team. Members of their team checking in to see Are they stuck? Trying to prevent any blockages that the new hire might encounter. Social events. We heard about talent shows and game nights and happy hours. Some of them mentioned having an onboarding buddy, and others talked about having an assigned mentor. For the third research question, we looked to better understand what the team interactions were with the new hires. We found that the majority of the new hires communicated using Microsoft Teams with their team. Almost 60% of the new hires met with at least one person from their team in a one-on-one meeting every single day. And these communication interactions mainly focused on work topics and not social topics. Over 70% of the communication interaction would last less than 30 minutes. So that's an individual interaction would last less than 30 minutes, not total over a day's time. For our last research question, we look at the social connection that new hires have to their new team. We found that over 83% of the participants did feel connected to their team. We did have some participants mention that it was harder for them to connect with their team if others didn't have their cameras on, or just the idea of working remotely and not being in the same space changed how they built their team connection. Others mentioned that they didn't really have a lot of time to work on building social connection while onboarding and working remotely, but the majority did feel connected to their team. Based on our data analysis and observations, we have developed recommendations for remote onboarding. And this is detailed in the paper. These categories have additional text that further explain these recommendations. But for time's sake, I'm just going to go through a couple. One of them, the first one, promote communication, asking for help. Encourage new hires to ask for help rather than trying to solve the problem themselves if it's going to take less time if they ask for help. Encourage them to reach out rather than sit there for a couple days. And promote communication within the team so that everyone knows what is being worked on and who is doing what. Emphasize team building and maintaining that team connectedness. Especially when the team is remote, it's harder to connect. So just emphasizing that team building is important and trying to encourage activities that help contain that connectedness. And finally, just for time's sake, onboarding buddy and technical mentor. One of our recommendations is assigning an onboarding buddy within a different team that can help with high-level questions about the company, and then a technical mentor, so someone within their team. And so they have someone from a different team where they can network and meet more people, and then also their technical mentor who knows the code base, who knows the project that new hire is working on, and it can help with specifics. Again, the rest of this is in the paper, and I hope that you check it out. Thank you for attending this talk. If you would like to get a hold of any of us, our emails are at the bottom of this slide. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Gavin Murphy from the University of British Columbia, and I'm really happy to be hosting this session. I'm here now with Paige Rodagro, who is the first author of the paper that you just watched. And we can see that there's been a few questions asked in the chat, so let's start with those ones. I think we had a question about whether or not, Paige, you analyzed how the newcomers perceive leadership from the work that you did.
That's a really good question. We actually haven't looked at that. That's something that we would be interested in looking at, but we focused on the onboarding to the team and more of just their experience with the team rather than just looking at the manager and the leadership.
And so when you did your analysis, you had 6 themes that were about challenges faced when onboarding. Can you compare some of those challenges that you found, maybe when onboarding happens in person, if you happen to know anything about that situation? And do you know if there's any differences that for those that had actually worked somewhere else versus those that were going into their first job?
Yeah. So you asked about in person? Yeah. So some of these recommendations that we provide at the end, or the 6 things, like communication, are a little bit different because virtually you're not running into people in the hallway, you're not getting water or pop or food, or running into them in the parking lot. So there is a delayed communication issue, especially if you're on a different time zone, and now people are like moving around the world to work remotely. So some of the findings we found with this study are definitely impacted by that, and also impacted, by just not seeing people and like the pandemic and those stressors, which are very different than pre-COVID-19 working in person. I'm trying to remember your second question, Gail, and I am.
Yeah. Did you find there was any difference between those that maybe this was a job they were onboarding into, but they had 10 years of experience, versus people maybe just coming out of their educational experience?
Yeah, so during our analysis, we didn't look directly at that, but just like as observational point of view, we did see like some differences, just like, well, looking at the data that potentially that people who had been, working in industry, who had more experience, maybe had a different experience. And so one of the things we write about in is having different paths for onboarding. So maybe someone coming straight out of college may need more help in certain areas onboarding than someone who has that experience. But I don't have any definite results on that to share.
And did you correlate any of your recommended onboarding activities with either improved experiences, perceptions, or productivity?
Oh, we wanted to look at productivity. We looked at perceived productivity, but we never actually got to do any correlations or any quantitative work with that. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I would love to look at that and correlate some of this data, because I think that we could see some impact of the challenges that they face with the productivity and the perceived productivity and also actual productivity.
Do you think you're going to have any ability to trace those folks like over a year or anything, so that maybe as they transition back to in person, you can find out a comparative view of what they experienced?
I would love to. That would be super cool, but we don't actually have any way to track who these survey participants were. So for that study, we're not able to do that. I think it would be really cool. It would be really interesting, especially because I think there's been like a big shift with remote work since COVID-19. And so potentially someone that onboards, today, they might have a very different experience than maybe last March 2020, not 2021. Feels like 1 year still. But yeah, I think that's a really great idea. It's just we don't have a way to track who answered our surveys for that one.
And we have a question in the chat about whether or not others might be able to reuse your survey questions for a similar study.
Yeah, it is online. I believe we have it on archive. Tom, I don't know if everyone can see Tom, but Tom might remember. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Tom has a link. Yeah, so it's all available there, all of the survey questions. So would love to see someone reuse those questions for another study.
And what questions would you now add that you didn't have in that set that they might find online?
That's a wonderful question. It's a really good question. I think maybe more about the specifics of working with the manager that they have, maybe more of mentorship or forming informal mentorships, the way that things changed over time. So we did this survey in, I think it was June or July 2020. And so a lot of these folks had recently onboarded, very recently. And so there wasn't a lot of time that they were at Microsoft, but say we did it now, we could get a bigger range of like when people onboarded during this remote work. So maybe even just looking at some of the different ways that their work changes based on being there 1 week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks and a month and 2 months, etc. I think that would be really interesting because some of the folks had been there maybe a month and some had been there 3, but most or everyone we surveyed had not been there 6 months at that point. So just looking more at like the changes that they experience. I know that I've talked to some managers that would do like, potentially 2 one-on-ones a week, or some did one a week, and like how these things shift and how that affects productivity would be really interesting, and their team connection and maintaining that team connection over time would be really interesting, especially with this like virtual work.
And did you look at all at how the newcomers might have been interacting together? Like, was there any consideration of creating cohorts of newcomers if there was more than one in a given team or across teams?
I didn't. I did. We talk about in the paper briefly that we did some interviews, and just like observationally, I don't think there are large amounts, and Tom, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are large amounts of newcomers on a specific team at the same time necessarily, and so it might be hard to do something like that. Maybe on like a large team or org.
I just wonder if if they were able to share their experiences. At least things I remember being a newcomer in situations is sometimes the other newcomers were the ones you felt most comfortable to express something you were finding that was maybe a little bit unexpected. And you didn't necessarily want to ask your mentor if you were the only one who couldn't print or the only one who couldn't do something, right?
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yep. And I know that there are like groups, and I think most companies probably have this, like where they have events and stuff for newcomers and people onboarding. So they hopefully like were able to meet through those kinds of things too. But specific teams, I think there aren't typically probably 3 or 4 people onboarding at the same time.
And now that you've had a bit of time to reflect about the method that you used right after writing the paper and going through what you're recommending, would you have any advice for someone that wants to go and maybe replicate your study in terms of things that you learned or things that you would like to see done differently or things you would definitely keep the same?
Yeah, good question. I probably would have used most of the same questions. I was definitely very focused on the challenges at that time. I was really interested in that. Partly, even a personal interest. I was a visiting researcher, and so I also was onboarding at Microsoft remotely during COVID. So like it was somewhat of a personal interest too. I think the challenge is focusing on that. I would have done that again, but I definitely would have focused a little bit more too, maybe on the mentorship and like onboarding, like maybe buddies, friends, like how they form those relationships and how do they maintain those, and do those friendships really affect productivity